Hey, welcome in.
Welcome to the Arrowhead Addict podcast.
We are here coming to you live. The Kansas City Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl. You only win a Super Bowl 2 times every 5 years, right? Oh! The warm-up act is over. Let's bring in Melissa Etheridge, massive Chiefs fan. Melissa,
Super Bowl champion, 2-time Pro Bowler, and Trent Green. Trent Green, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
And he picked it up! He picked it up! He's gonna score! And we'll see you next week, but until then, as always, go Chiefs.
Welcome into the Arrowhead Addict Podcast Tuesday edition. I am Sterling Holmes, joined as always by Brisco. You can follow him on the X at JB Brisco, myself at Homestretch KC. Brisco, how we doing?
You can also now follow me on platforms other than Sterling's X. You can also follow me on Threads and Blue Sky. I'm just trying them all to see if any of them feel less terrible. It's for the young kids, Stu. Don't worry about it. I'll let you know which one wins out for me, and then you can just go ahead and skip the little trial period I'm currently doing.
What's Threads?
Is that real? Is that a real question?
Like clothes?
So Threads is like the Instagram, Facebook, Meta version of Twitter that they launched more than a year ago now, kind of early in the days of the Twitter Elon takeover, rebrand, collapse, engineer firing, all of that. So that's Threads, and then Blue Sky is like another sort of independent ground up kind of attempts to rebuild Twitter over there. And I would say that honestly, if I had to guess, I'd say none of them are great. None of them are great for our psyche or for the human condition in general, but I've accepted that I will always be posting. And I figure I might as well try these other places too and figure out if the replies are full of fewer bots on these other sites. So far, so good.
ABP, baby. Always be posting.
Always be posting.
Well, what it's going to be is once they figure out which one wins, then the bots go to that. That's just life, baby.
Yeah, when Twitter employed engineers, they did have a better way of fighting back against all of those bots and like hate speech and everything. But those are the olden days. Now we're looking for greener grass.
Well, green grass is what was in front of Joshua Williams as he landed on the ball that was blocked by Leo Chanel. What a play. Like, I want to get into this in more detail, obviously, but just what a play. What a Chiefs play. I know there is some luck involved when you block a extra point, or a field goal.
Effectively, it was an extra point. I think it was 6 feet further than an extra point would have been. Not yards, feet.
There is luck involved, but there is strategy and skill as well. And I feel like everyone who's not in Kansas City glosses over that and just says, look how lucky the Chiefs are. They did get lucky, but let's have some nuance here. They realized that Leo Chanel had a advantage over Forsythe, and he just completely destroyed him. We did a thing where we looked up the previous, I think, 9 or 10 snaps on an extra point or field goal from Forsythe. And like almost every single one besides one, he was laying on his ass after the play. So they said, well, where can we have an advantage here? Let's overload that side with Karlaftis, with Leo Chanel, and just bleep and bring it at him. And it worked. They just destroyed him. So to me, there was some strategy there. You don't do it every single time there's an extra point because then you're giving away one of your advantages in case you have a situation like this where you really need to try and block the extra point or a field goal. I just want to give the Chiefs coaching staff a lot of credit for identifying that, for Leo Chanel for identifying that. I was just so damn impressed. I was talking to Mike Pennell after the game in the locker room, and Big Mike talked about how Leo kind of called his shot on that, which I thought was pretty fascinating. Like Leo obviously saw that he had an advantage. That's the play call. Leo kind of knew that he was going to be the guy to knock that ball down, which I thought was pretty badass.
It also is kind of the perfect mix of what I think the two prongs are of kind of the like air quotes finding a way to win. This is something I've talked about a couple of times already in these last couple of days. And the further into the weeds I go, the more I believe all of this as core to what this Chiefs dynasty is built out of in a lot of ways. To your point, I won't relitigate all of the things, but the Chiefs and Dave Toub and the special teams unit as a whole They saw a persistent issue in the Broncos special teams and then had a plan to exploit that, exploited it, and saved the game. That's not even luck. That's preparation and execution and talent. And a lot of times, luck or being successful in clutch moments or finding a way to win, putting air quotes around all of those phrases, so often all of those things effectively, I think, boil down to, well, this team has Patrick Mahomes, so they are clutch more often because he's better than you. He executes better. He's more creative. His arm is stronger. And so a lot of times you kind of build those narratives that fit around great execution and great players. The awesome thing about your 2 points there, Sterling, is that in this instance, it was preparation, execution. Even Derek Nottie is out there pulling his guy down. Justin Reed's getting a great jump around the edge, and then the white wall of Karlaftis and Chanel and Cochran all handle their jobs over there on the right side. And you get execution across the board that pays off on the preparation that you had going into it. That still guarantees you nothing, but it gives you a good chance. The thing about Leo calling a shot, I genuinely believe that the Chiefs genuinely believe that they have a better chance of succeeding in a moment like that than anybody else. And that's not fairy tale, take the word of your head coach and then hope for the best. The Chiefs have earned that with back-to-back championships and 3 over the course of this era and ongoing success and come from behind wins and clutch moments and haven't lost since last Christmas. All of that comes together in a moment like that. It is preparation. It is execution. It is belief. And I think on some level, man, it's the work that you do during the week when you realize, oh, actually, I could save this game and protect our undefeated season by bowling over Alex Forsyth with no time left on the clock, winning 16-14. That you prepare for that, you execute that, boom, you're undefeated. Everybody looks, if you look quickly, it looks like luck. If you look closely, it looks like everything else that we just broke down.
Yeah, and the Chiefs are 9-0, while apparently the Detroit Lions can throw 5 interceptions and they find a way to win. And everyone says, look at that scrappy Lions team. But then the Chiefs do this and they go, how do they keep winning close games? Well, how do you keep praising one team and somehow using it in a disparaging tone to bring down another? Yep. That's a conversation that I don't want to get into. So we're not. I do want to talk about Isaiah Pacheco. I do want to talk about Charles Omenihu. I do want to talk about the offensive line. And before we talk about all that, I want to talk about winning. And you can win right there on Underdog, baby. Yeah, we talk about it, and it's bleeping awesome. Underdog. It's so easy. Higher, lower. You choose on your favorite player's stats, and you have a chance to win real cash prizes all season long. They have great other aspects to Underdog that make them so much different and more unique than other sites. They have vulture protection. If you select a designated running back to score a touchdown in your pick'em entry and they get vultured, oh, that's okay. They'll rescue your entry. Who else is doing that, huh? You tell me.
Not my fantasy team.
Underdog. Yeah, not my fantasy team either. But you can join over 5 million fans that are already playing right there on Underdog. With that champs game, you can win money by making entries with your favorite players. And if you download the app today and use code Arrowhead Addict, all one word, you can get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Again, that's code Arrowhead Addict, all one word, to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Higher or lower, you make the call. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama, Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Consider with your play. Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Arizona 1-800-NEXT STEP 1-800-639-8783 or text NEXT STEP to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 8 or 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. I saw 1-8 in my mind's eye before I could get to the 1-877. That one got me. Son of a gun.
So is T. Higgins supposed to play or not? Is that happening? I'm looking at my fantasy. This conversation started. Let me see how I did in fantasy. And I see T. Higgins is ranked and expected to play. Are we sure?
I don't care about that. But talking about a couple guys who are expected to play at least some point soon, that is Isaiah Pacheco and Charles Omenihu. They were both, according to sources, activated and selected to return off of the IR.
Is that according to sources, or is that according to a report you saw on Twitter?
No, not my sources.
Okay.
According to what I'm saying is basically I'm quoting according to sources.
Right. Okay. Got it. Yep. With you.
The reporting. I got balloons going.
Balloons. I mean, listen, sources say Sterling deserves balloons. The only reason I was nitpicking there is because I don't think any of those moves have been made yet, but that the expectation is that they will be activated officially tomorrow, presumably.
And that's why I say according to sources, not according to me.
According to someone else's sources.
According to Jordan Schultz, I believe Adam Teicher also said that today.
Okay. Well, according to Adam Teicher, then, damn it, put his name on it.
Well,
that's a legend. Yes. That's a legend who you're glossing right over there.
Oh, yeah, I did. You know what? Yeah. I was talking to Teicher at the game on Sunday. I'm sure he's probably seen enough stew for a while. He's probably
Are you sitting together?
We were close and we were hanging out afterwards, just going when you're walking down the locker room. It was fun.
Love Teicher, man. He's the best.
Yeah, great guy. But you now have, if this again, according to Teicher and Jordan Schultz, if this is true, they have a 21-day window to activate these guys. You got 3 weeks. So the Andy Reid normalcy is that first week, you just practice. So if you expect to see Charles or Isaiah against Buffalo, I think you're going to be sorely mistaken. If you think you're going to see him against Carolina, you're probably correct. But there's also that short week following that game. So maybe they just wait almost if it's a short week, that like 18 days or whatever it would be, and bring him back for that third game. They're all a possibility. But what it really means is Pacheco and Charles Omenihu are close to arriving for Kansas City, and it's coming at a very good time, especially, you know what, I think for both. Let's start with Isaiah Pacheco first. Okay, Brisco. One, I think it's a good time because Kareem Hunt sure looks like he's starting to maybe feel the toll of the amount of touches he's been receiving in all these games. So I think lightening Kareem's workload allows him to go back to the more efficient Kareem while also having a little bit more, not a crazy explosive player, but a more explosive running back in Isaiah Pacheco splitting carries. What are your thoughts with Pacheco soon coming back?
I want to take one step back and just give you a stat from Sunday that Robert Mays read on the Athletic Football Show, saying the Chiefs' running game this year has been third in the NFL in rushing success rate at about 47.5%. Sunday against the Broncos on running back runs specifically, the Chiefs had a 19% success rate. So I think your eyes are not lying to you. And also that's partially the Broncos defense, which is very good. So there's, apple and I almost said apple and egg, chicken and egg, apples and oranges. Which came first, the apple or the egg? That one should be easier to identify. I think there should be
the apple
records of that, right? I think it's the apple, right?
Well,
I guess that's
the Bible.
Read the Bible.
First thing, yeah, it's like the first thing.
Now, Sterling, the Bible doesn't say it's an apple. The Bible says it's a forbidden fruit, and throughout culture. Never mind. I'll bring Renee in for this one later. She has the actual qualifications to explain this to you. So, starting with Pacheco, I think you're right. It gives them a bit of a two-headed monster with a Samaje Perine third down role continuing to exist. Carson Steele can still come in if you want to have more of a fullback type guy back there. And of course, you can still hand him the football lined up as a fullback if you want to do that. The Chiefs handed a ball to Kareem Hunt in a fullback formation on Sunday. So, I mean, nobody's role there is super, super set in stone. It's nothing but good things. To have Pacheco back, obviously a positive. I will say that to me, this doesn't change much in the way that Rashee Rice would or Hollywood Brown maybe still could near the end of the year. Isaiah Pacheco coming back, I don't think is going to change or massively improve the offense. I almost said or improve the offense, and that's not quite fair. Pacheco being back is going to help keep the offense afloat for longer, right? Because you are relying a little bit less on Kareem Hunt. You are hopefully then maybe those guys are each getting around 10 to 12 carries instead of Hunt getting 25 or 27 is his high, I think, right? So it just adds another legitimate professional running back there that can't be anything other than a positive. It's good for Kareem. It's good for Pacheco. It's good for the offense. I do wonder what's going to happen with running back 5 at this point. Clyde Edwards-Helaire has not been active. He's been a healthy scratch since coming off the NFI list. And Carson Steele has to play because he plays special teams. And none of those other top 3 running backs, or none of those other 4 running backs really play special teams for the Chiefs. So I don't think you can let Steele go. And then you will actually, maybe they just carry 4 healthy active running backs and then have one as a healthy scratch to kind of keep doing right by Clyde. But I don't know. Maybe there's a move to come there as well. But ultimately, I think it's great to have Pacheco back. I think it's going to help keep them on track, not necessarily change the track.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't think the ceiling, I should say, is getting drastically raised, but maybe the floor of the yards per carry are going down now. Pacheco's going to help that out, just, again, based on workload alone.
Yeah.
The eye test, as well as the underlying numbers, again, kind of showing that Kareem might be hitting a slight wall with the amount of workload that he has been receiving. So, again, good news in the Pacheco front. Now, I think another big one is Charles Omenihu. I'm intrigued to see how he fits. I'm intrigued to see how he looks. Again, I do not expect to see him against Buffalo, but maybe the week following, you'd probably expect to see Pacheco before you'd even see Omenihu, because Omenihu has not done anything in a long time. You got to really ramp that guy up. I'm intrigued because the Chiefs have really struggled to get a lot of pressure when they only rush 4. It's a lot of designed Spags pressure, if you will. Like they're all like Najee Johnson is getting a sack. Nick Bolton is getting a sack. It's not Joshua Uche. It's not FAU. It's not Carl. I mean, Carl Loftus has been a lot better since the bye, but he was, quite frankly, did nothing against the Denver Broncos. Chris Jones was more or less a non-factor against the Denver Broncos. Joshua Uche only played 11 snaps, which was really surprising. I think Charles Omenihu gives you a lot more juice. I think he's a guy who can play all 3 downs, opposed to Joshua Uche or FAU pretty much being a third down or pass rush only specialist. I think Omenihu really does raise the ceiling and the floor when he comes back, and if he comes back extremely healthy.
Yeah, there's a big asterisk and a big if that you already rightfully mentioned there. But I think other than Hollywood or Rashee Rice, if I could just wave a magic wand and make one injured member of this Chiefs team 100% healthy, it would be Charles Omenihu for me. Again, Hollywood or Rice, I guess in inverse order. I would go Rice, Hollywood, Omenihu in terms of the stuff you've lost so far this year. The challenging thing is that he got hurt in January. He tore his ACL in January. I don't know if he's going to look 100% in January, in late January, the AFC Championship game, right? So I don't know what his timeline really is. I don't know how close he's going to look to that peak performance of what you expect him to be when he looks like the Charles Omenihu that we saw down the stretch last year. The frustrating thing there is that I think when he's healthy, I think he's probably the best pure edge rusher this team has. The other thing that's kind of fun to think about, again, even knowing that I don't know where Omenihu is going to land exactly, Felix has had a pretty good second year in the NFL by and large, at least by what we saw from him as a rookie. He's going to be the 5th defensive end come playoff time if everybody else stays healthy. You have Karlaftis and Dana starting, and then Omenihu working his way in. Again, he should be starting, but we'll see where he ramps up to. And then you have Joshua Uche, who you pointed out has not played very much to this point, which worries me a little bit. Because it's not like he necessarily has to learn a whole route combination, reading the defense, all of that. Like, I'd like to see a little more from him, but the Chiefs have added some guys and not played them very quickly on the defensive side before, either midseason additions or like Cam Thomas before the season. That was like a real move to bring somebody in, and he's only been active when Dana's been hurt. I think he's played 3 total defensive snaps. So he's edge 6 at this point, I guess. All that to say, I'm hopeful for Omenihu. I don't know how fair it is to be optimistic 10 months removed from an ACL tear. It's a big, big learning curve, but I think that's a big, big deal for him to be back.
Yeah, again, it's raising the floor and raising the ceiling, especially when they do that souped up NASCAR package. Always fun seeing Chris Jones, Karlaftis, Omenihu, and then maybe it's Uche, maybe it's FAU. Again, I think you're right. FAU has actually been, I don't want to say he's been extremely impressive, but you have at least seen a step forward for a guy who was extremely raw when he was drafted, which is, again, nice to see. I think we're past the he's unplayable, which brings me to left tackle.
Yeah.
Kingsley Suamataia is unplayable. You can't do it. For all the hate that Wanya Morris got, and I kept trying to tell folks, I'm like, guys, Wanya Morris is okay. He's not the issue. It's when he gets injured, if he gets injured, which we've seen him come out of a couple games just banged up, nothing extremely serious, knock on wood yet, but he has come out of a couple games now. You can't go back to Kingsley. I'm not saying that Kingsley's career's done. I'm not saying he's a bust. I've said time and time again, I think edge rushers and tackles are the hardest spots to go from college to the NFL. I think it's so difficult. You're no longer playing Eastern Washington. You're now playing the best of the best dudes from Bama, Georgia, or the just premier players every single week. There's no way to hide. Well, it looked like Kingsley at one point was trying to hide. He was not getting a hand on anyone. I mean, it was perplexing. I think he's in his dome. But what do you do? Because if Wanya, God forbid, something happens and he gets injured, I think the Chiefs are done. I think you cannot go back to Kingsley this year.
It was pretty brutal. I don't want to say that in any way I was like excited when Wanya got hurt. That's certainly not true. But like I did immediately have the thought of like, well, relax, bud. I had the thought of after like 2 weeks of these conversations about Kingsley and like maybe, hadn't been a great couple of weeks for Wanya Morris. I had the thought when Wanya went out and it didn't seem incredibly serious at the time. I thought like, okay, well, this will be a good chance to kind of get a check-in from Kingsley. See, has he improved? Is he going to look like a fish out of water out there? What are we going to see from him? I think that we are going to be free of having any more of those prior conversations about maybe they should give Kingsley another shot. I think with his performance against Denver, that conversation has been put to bed for the remainder of the year, which is pretty crushing, all things considered. Not even that I was holding out a lot of hope that he would take the job over, but I just thought we probably would have to see him at some point. By the way, not to make anybody panic, but Kingsley is the first man up at right tackle too. There's not another active tackle on game days. Ethan Driscoll is on the 53-man roster. He's a healthy scratch every week because he's kind of basically redshirting on the 53, and dude is an absolute behemoth, so I understand why. But it was, I'll say what I said. I don't remember when I said this. Who cares? I said this probably yesterday because it hasn't been very many days since the football game happened. I don't think Wanya Morris would be the reason the Chiefs didn't three-peat. I think he could be something you have to work around. I don't think he would be a star on that run. I don't think that Wanya Morris is going to be the reason you do win your third consecutive championship. But if you just gave me the Chiefs starting lineup and I saw Wanya Morris at left tackle for a Super Bowl, I'd say, all right, that's something to keep an eye on, but I don't think he's going to single-handedly lose you the game. I can't echo that as confidently about Kingsley right now. He really did look just about unplayable. It was brutal against Cincinnati, but it was like, oh, it's a tough matchup. Again, going back to me having a little bit of hope for seeing him on the field on Sunday, there wasn't much to hang your hat on. There's not much to be hopeful for. Maybe you try this again in training camp and give him that entire offseason and having an entire year under his belt. But again, when you talk about a rookie, getting like a year on the bench, I think you're generally assuming they will be forced into action at some point. A couple of quarters here, a game or two there. And right now, I mean, I am legitimately in that like Donovan Smith conversation because I don't even think the Chiefs can afford to have Kingsley out there right now, barring there being some really good excuse for why it was as bad on Sunday as it was.
Yeah. Again, don't want to say I don't ever believe in Kingsley going forward for next year or the rest of his career, but this season, excuse me, I don't believe that that's the way the Chiefs can go when you're trying to three-peat, which brings me into the next question. We don't have to talk too long about this. Do the Chiefs legitimately go after Donovan Smith, Charles Leno, right? Charles Leno been around the block a time or two.
Thought about him. Yeah.
He actually graded out pretty well last year, but he's also coming off of injury. But Charles Leno has actually graded 40? Out. No, he's younger than you think. I think he might only be 33.
Okay.
Believe it or not.
I always put him there with those 40-year-olds.
Yeah, he's not.
He is 33.
Yeah.
My apologies, Chuck.
Yeah. So I think maybe you look at Charles Leno, who's been really solid in pass protection for the past few seasons when healthy, or you go with David Bakhtiari, who's been an all-pro when healthy, played one game last year, played 11 the year prior. The reason he played 11 was because of an appendectomy. Year prior to that, he played one game. David Bakhtiari was talking on Twitter, kind of going with Mahomes, saying, hey, if Texas Tech wins, I'll come back and I'll play tackle for you. I think the issue with David Bakhtiari is one, and Leno and Donovan Smith. This is kind of an issue for all three of those guys. They've all made a lot of money. David Bakhtiari specifically, he's made $100 million. I mean, he signed a ridiculous contract at one point. He ain't signing to your practice squad. Does he even want to be a backup? Which I think at this point, you're basically vying for the backup to Wanya Morris. I don't think you bring in one of those guys, Donovan Smith, David, Charles Leno, and say, you know what? Yeah, you're now the starter halfway through the season when you haven't played a game in like over at least a year. That seems perplexing. So do any of those guys say, that's fine, I will take a backup role? I don't know. I think that's the issue.
If Bakhtiari is waiting for starting money and a starting job, he can keep waiting, and he'll be waiting until the end of time. I don't know. I hadn't thought about Leno at all, obviously, as we just covered. It's kind of interesting. But at this point for me, man, I think it's Donovan Smith or bust. Because on so many levels, he makes sense in places the other guys don't. Bakhtiari does not give you more reliability at that position. Bakhtiari gives you a ticking time bomb, and you can figure out over the course of however much season you have him for, are we going to have him 3 consecutive weeks? Are we going to have him on artificial surfaces in the postseason? I don't know. And so at this point, 13 games in 3 years, the appendectomy point is a fair thing, but two single game appearances. He hasn't played football in more than a year. I'm just not interested on virtually any level there. I'm not buying the ceiling, and his floor is as low as Kingsley, because you sign him, you make him be the big thing. Wanya Morris gets hurt, Bakhtiari goes in. 1 game later, hey, Kingsley, sorry we signed David Bakhtiari. We do need you to play football now, though, because it's you or a guy off, or you or Chu Goderick off the practice squad, right? So I don't think it can be him. I haven't given Leno much thought. That would be interesting to know if the Chiefs had any interest there. Donovan Smith makes sense because he and Mahomes know each other. He knows the offense, at least in concept, right? He would be joining in progress half a season removed from when he was starting in the Super Bowl for this team. And I have to imagine, like, you sign into the practice squad as an obvious bookkeeping measure at this point, right? You sign into the practice squad, you're there for a week, we call you up, and then it is, I think, to your point, I think you say, hey, you're here to back up Wanya Morris, and if he gets hurt, you go in. Or if Jawan Taylor gets hurt, Wanya has to flip to the right side, and then you go to the left. Because I don't think you're going to make Donovan Smith your swing tackle at this point in his life. So I think Donovan Smith as depth, as a floor setter, I do think makes sense. I would be open to that in the way that I was not interested in training camp, because I thought you wanted to see this pan out. And hey, look, it cost the Chiefs nothing, because you're at a point now where you're still talking about Donovan Smith in mid-November, and he's still out there. So I would want to know where he's at, and I'd want to know where Wanya's knee is at. But either way, I am definitely a little bit gun-shy now about this idea that in late December, Wanya Morris, tears up his elbow or something, and all of a sudden you're talking to yourself about a Kingsley playoff run. Maybe he will be improved by then, but it's hard for me to bet on it, seeing the difference between where he was in week 2 and where he was on Sunday, which did not seem like a terribly large period of growth.
Yeah, again, it comes down to, and I get what you're saying with David and Donovan and all those guys. Do they want to be backups? I know it's easy to say, well, you're not doing or getting paid right now on, at home on the couch. Yeah, a lot of these guys don't care. Right? I know it's crazy, but for Brisco, for myself, I would probably say 99% of the people in here watching, hanging out with us, $200K moves the needle a lot. That's a life-changing amount of money. For these guys, they're sitting here going, I don't have to get back in shape. I can just still sit on my couch. I've made enough money. My investments are okay. Yeah, I don't need that money.
Yeah, but then I think you just retire at that point, right? Like, it's not about the money then. It's, do you want to keep playing NFL football? Like, do you want to try to get
they probably do, but as a starter is what I'm saying. They do that. They just don't want to sit there on the bench.
Right, but they're all in their 30s and it's November. So I think that ship has sailed.
Sure. The other question is, small one I've talked about. CJ Hansen, Ethan Driscoll, a good chunk of time has been spent on the 53-man roster. The Chiefs have kept him this long for a reason. One of those guys most likely would be gone or picked up by another team. Not guaranteed, but a chance that those guys will be picked up by another team if you sign one of these veterans. just a very, very minor thing to consider.
Yeah, I wonder one of them may have to end up paying the price for the IR activations, unless they get Omenihu back and say, thanks, Cam Thomas. That was neat, but not worth it. Or again, if they bring back Pacheco and they go ahead and try to get Clyde. I mean, they'd get Clyde on the practice squad for sure, but say, hey, bud, we're going to go ahead and put you on their practice squad the rest of the way, which I think would make sense for them to do. Hansen would be the interesting one. It seems like they're probably pretty sold on Driscoll developmentally. I wonder if they could get Hansen into the practice squad. But yeah, good thought, fair question for a group that's, scratching 5 healthy players most weeks.
Yeah, and again, for a group that you're going to have a lot of moving parts potentially heading into next year, right? Yep. That's the fun part of the NFL. It's not always, this year and only this year. It's also building, developing for the future. Yep. Which is hilarious when you have won back-to-back Super Bowls and you're going for a three-peat and you still might be one of the better positioned teams for the future. It's a pretty cool window here in KC. It doesn't suck. It's not the Rams who went all in one year and then you're seeing the results. It's not the Buccaneers who sold their soul for Tom Brady in that Super Bowl and they've been fairly brutal. It's, oh no, they've won and they're still having a very bright future. And you're not even like the Bills or the Bengals who thought their window was open perpetually and they've not won a single thing to show for it. Sure, you've been good. You've been really good, but ain't no bling to show for it. It's kind of interesting how KC has the future, the past, and the current.
And the present.
That's the current, I guess, yeah.
Well, but they have the present and the current Kansas City.
Yeah, I was saying the team. That was a good call. Thank you.
Kansas City also has the current. To your point there, that's also the reason they didn't trade for Marshawn Lattimore. And I know that there are still people who are kind of like been out of shape about some of that. That's what that math all comes into. By the way, little extra thing is where I think maybe nearing our runway. I don't know what else you want to talk about, but it was interesting to me to see that when Najee Johnson came back, he played almost every snap. Joshua Williams got 6 snaps. And then do you know who the next highest snapping cornerback was behind McDuffie, 100%? Najee Johnson was like 92%, and then Joshua Williams had like 8%. You know what other cornerbacks got work?
It's either going to be none or Christian Roland Wallace.
Let me ask you this then. How many snaps did Christian Roland Wallace play?
3.
0.
Oh.
Which is interesting because McDuffie and Williams were the outside guys last week. Obviously, Johnson was hurt. They were the outside guys, and Chris Roland Wallace was your slot guy. But it was, I don't have the exact number in front of me now. I think it was 33 snaps. It was a season-high number of snaps for Shamari Connor in the slot. I don't think he's at his best as a man coverage slot corner, but he is the 5th best defensive back on the field at any given point, or, top 5, I guess. And sometimes he's the 4th best defensive back on the field. So I thought that was interesting just in kind of that conversation about the Chiefs defense.
Yeah, very interesting. Before we get out of here, I guess, any final thoughts on Trent McDuffie in that game? Because I've talked about it. He got cooked by Cortland Sutton. Sutton could have made it worse, but he dropped a ball. I basically said I'm not worried because cornerbacks have bad games. It's like a pitcher in baseball. Like I always call them closers, right? Where great cornerbacks, like 9 times out of 10, like closers, you're going to shut the door. It looks easy. You're outstanding. But there's always going to be a couple times a year where you get shelled and you get blown up. McDuffie got shelled, and that was his blown save. It didn't hurt the team. They rallied in the bottom of the 9th and were able to win the game. But I don't know if you have any underlying thoughts on McDuffie.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably his worst game as a pro, and I'm very, very much not really worried about it. The one was just a clean release where Sutton got away from McDuffie getting his hands on him, and then all of a sudden, daylight. Yeah. So I don't see that being terribly repeatable. Teams can try, but they've been trying that for a while now. I'm actually on some level, either guys that had bad games or bad moments. I'm kind of putting McDuffie, Mahomes, and Butker all in a similar portion of the analysis for me, which is that all of those guys, McDuffie had a straight up bad game by his standards and maybe by average corner standards. Again, I'm not worried about it, but McDuffie had a bad game. Mahomes missed 2 touchdowns, and Harrison Butker gave the Denver Broncos offense the jumpstart it needed for the final drive of the game by kicking it short of the landing zone. Dave Tobe can take a little bit of that also, because I'm sure they called for that. But
yeah, I know Butker says
missed that kick.
Butker kind of landed on the sword, it sounded like, after the game, but also I'm like, I think you might just be saving Dave Tobe there. That's not a situation that I think Butker's like, I'm just going to go ahead and wing this now and do that.
I'm going to go rogue. Yeah, I'd be surprised. I don't know. Hopefully somebody will ask Tobe about it on Thursday. But a horrible whiff for Butker, 2 missed touchdowns for Mahomes, and a bad day for Trent McDuffie. I'm not changing my evaluation of any of those 3 players because I think the resume speaks for itself at this point.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for listening, everyone. Always appreciate it. If you want to throw us a like, a 5-star review, a comment wherever you get your podcast, that'd be outstanding. You can follow Brisco on Twitter at Holmes, or you can follow him at JB Brisco, myself at Homestretch KC. I said Twitter for you instead of X because you always rip on me for calling it the X.
I understood why you said the Twitter all the time. It sounds like an old name. And you say on the X, it sounds like you're talking about a past lover.
Well, I'm not. I'm talking about the social media platform
in some
that
ways,
I inhabit.
X is a past lover for me, actually. So that actually might have worked. I miss you, Twitter. I can't believe you left and became
all right.
the X.
Final thought. This was funny to me. Nick Bolton was walking in. You know, when they walk in the tunnel. I don't know how much you ever went to the games and did that stuff, but
not often.
I was Lebo on Sunday.
I love that.
And just with better head of hair, obviously, and
worse everything else,
and
better mustache, better head of
things,
hair,
yeah.
worse most other things.
Yeah, we were walking in, and Nick Bolton's walking down. All of a sudden, he just looks at me and goes, "M-I-Z." It was awesome.
Wow.
It was an incredible thing. So yeah, so I had Nick Bolton. He said M-I-Z, and I obviously finished with the Z-O-U.
So at that point,
Nick Bolton in high spirits. I'm sure that Creed Humphrey and the other OU fellas were not super thrilled by the outcome of that game. But
tell you what, Lebo would not have given him a ZOU.
He would not. But everyone, again, thank you guys so much. I'll be back tomorrow with Adam Best on Wacky Wednesday. Brisco will be up in about 45 minutes or so on KCSN. Only weird games, and only a weird game that was. Really, it is kind of perfect.
Yeah, I just need people to realize we don't control what type of games they play. We just named our show very well. I'm sorry. If I had that kind of power, I would have called it Only Rich Hosts.
Yeah, on that note, we're going to head out. Thank you guys so much. Until next time, we are out.